open up that Crystal Pepsi and get comfortable.
This is Dope Nostalgia.
Time to welcome you to another edition of Dope Nostalgia, the podcast. We talk to people who had big things going on in their music careers in the 90s. My name's Naomi Carmack, and welcome. I have a special guest from an amazing Canadian band. Had a lot of hits, and they have the biggest sing-along songs you've ever heard from the East Coast of Canada. Great Big C's Sean McCann is joining me on the show today, and he's working on his solo career. So we're going to learn a lot about what he's up to. And first, before we move on, I'll give you a little bit of background on the band Great Big C.
Wikipedia moment.
Great Big Sea was a Canadian folk rock band from Newfoundland and Labrador, best known for performing energetic rock interpretations of traditional Newfoundland folk songs, including sea shanties, which draw from the island's 500-year Irish, Scottish, and Cornish heritage. The band was very successful in Canada, with 11 of their albums being certified gold in the country, including 4 being certified platinum and 2 achieving multi-platinum certifications. Between 1996 and 2016, Great Big Sea was the 16th best-selling Canadian artist in Canada and the 6th best-selling Canadian band in Canada. While it has been confirmed that the band has officially retired, former members Alan Doyle and Sean McCann have continued performing in their own solo careers, typically including music from Great Big Sea in their set lists. Now, our special guest today is Sean McCann, so here's a little information from Wikipedia about his career thus far. McCann has released 5 solo works: Lullabies for Bloodshot Eyes, Son of a Sailor, Help Yourself, You Know I Love You, and There's a Place. In June 2016, McCann released the folk song Proud to be a Canadian for free online in partnership with the Canadian Red Cross to benefit victims of the Fort McMurray wildfires. McCann told the Canadian press that his feelings of despair over the disaster led him to write the lyrics. Once he was finished, he contacted fellow musician Jeremy Fisher to help him in the studio. In November 2017, McCann organized a benefit songwriter circle at the Algonquin Commons Theatre in Ottawa with his friends Joel Plaskett, Sarah Harmer, and Jeremy Fisher to raise money to purchase guitars for veterans suffering with PTSD and other mental health issues. He's the Shanty Man, and he's going to be singing for the West Coast of Canada starting at the end of April on the 28th and 29th at the King Eddie in Calgary, Alberta, the 30th in Brooks, Alberta for the Rural Mental Health Conference, and scattered dates all throughout our province in May, including May 6th at my hometown, Edmonton, Alberta, at West Edmonton Mall. Thank you, Sean, for all you do to help out people who really need the support in their lives, and he's doing some great things with his music right now. Let's talk to the one and only Sean McCann. All right, well, welcome, Sean, to Dope Nostalgia. On our podcast, we talk about stuff that happened in the 90s as well as what you're up to now. And I want to thank Eric for getting us in contact. So obviously, Great Big Sea was a huge part of your career. What makes you say this is the band for me? How did it all start for you?
In a bar.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the bars of Newfoundland, St. John's, where I'm from. I mean, it's the highest amount of bars per capita in North America, and which is a good and a bad thing depending on what your vulnerabilities are. But one of the good things about it is that there's, because of the isolation, I think, that comes with being a Newfoundlander, there's a lot of people who learn very quickly to entertain themselves. So there's a very high quotient of talent, self-taught musicians who populate these bars. So if you haven't been, I'd recommend to go. And if you're a music fan, you can literally go from there's so many bars, and there's a band and a good band generally in every one. So that's where I grew up. And that was the situation I found myself in. And I started working in one of these bars when I started university, and I was just a busboy, and I noticed that these guys, the musicians, they got paid better and they met way more girls than me. So I decided early on that I wanted to be in the band. And
Excellent.
that was literally the motivation early on. So I bought a guitar and I started one.
Excellent. Excellent. So you guys, I know, are you still in the East Coast now?
I live in a little village called Manotick, just outside of Ottawa now. I moved here about
Oh,
7 years ago. Yeah.
okay. You got to tell us Albertans too what an East Coast kitchen party entails.
We invented that term, and it's a genuine thing. I mean, what happens is people end up congregating in the kitchen in Newfoundland because that's where the stove is.
Hmm.
So there's always typically a good party in Newfoundland. There's a stove with like stew on it or some pot of stuff you can access, and of course the beer's in the fridge.
Yeah.
But the music generally sounds better. I think it's the acoustics in kitchens with tiles and stuff. So guitars
Mm.
and accordions, they end up sitting at the kitchen table. And instead of it being in your living room or in your rec room, it's literally the heart of the party is in the kitchen.
Mm.
So it's. I think we started using the term kitchen party because I remember the Much Music. Erica M came to do a clip trip with us
Oh, cool.
before we were signed to a label or anything, and we took her to the kitchen, and she's like, "What is this?" And I said, "It's a kitchen party." She couldn't figure out why we were in the kitchen.
Oh my
So
goodness.
yeah, yeah. So that's where the phrase came from. I think where we actually called it that, but it existed long before we called it anything.
There's so many unique things about being from Newfoundland that I know that we've had a lot of people in Alberta who've come here for work over the last like 10 years or so, 15 years. So
Or
we've learned
30, yeah,
more,
probably more.
I should say, yeah, a lot more than that.
Forever.
But so I've learned a lot, about and I've always wanted to go to the East Coast, but the sad thing is just it costs so much money to fly there compared to flying anywhere else. And it's so strange.
Yeah, it's really. I mean, it's really hard if you're from there because you have to fly out. Generally, Newfoundland is as big as Texas,
Mm.
and it's an island in the North Atlantic, so it's not an easy boat ride either. So I mean, but the airlines they take full advantage of that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a beautiful place, but it's becoming more and more expensive to live there and get there. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think it's important that every Canadian tries to make the trip. I think
Yeah,
it's
and I think the
coast to
airlines,
coast.
they probably should give not just Newfoundland but Vancouver Island, places that are offshore. I mean, you think that there'd be a maximum fee you can charge, at some point.
Yeah, yeah, they should put some kind of a
Guaranteed
roof on that.
access to the world.
You should be able to see all of your own country, even though we come from the biggest country on the planet.
Exactly. Yeah, it should be. We should get to see it all. And I've been lucky. I've gotten to see every nook and cranny there is in Canada. I'm pretty sure, from
Yeah,
Iqaluit to Haida Gwaii, and I'm very grateful for that. It is a beautiful country we live in.
that is so cool that you've had those opportunities. Obviously with music and touring. When the band got successful, was it more success than you guys had anticipated? Because I noticed that in reading up on you, you guys took your name out of the running for some nominations for awards. Is that correct?
Yeah, that was the East Coast Music Awards because we were really, I guess it took us 2 years to get anywhere.
Mm.
And then whatever, we just never gave up. We weren't the best musicians by far in St. John's. We were just single bloody minded, and we were just smart enough and canny enough and tough enough to figure it out.
Mm.
And I think where we persevered, a lot of people just gave it up as in it's impossible, and we just never accepted that.
Mhm.
But when it hit, I mean, it took 2 years. It was quite the slog, and we gave ourselves a 2 year window. And at the end of that 2 years, I got to deal with Warner Music Canada, and I
Oh.
don't think they were. By that time, we'd sold 10,000 CDs. Remember those?
Oh yeah.
And it wasn't that they particularly liked the band. It's just like they wanted a part of it because they knew if we could sell 10,000 without them, they knew they could sell 100,000 with us.
Mhm.
So So anyway, we did take we ended up winning all these East Coast Music Awards for like 3 years in a row, and it just became a little bit. It just didn't. We withdrew because we wanted other East Coast artists to be able to win. It wasn't an ego thing, or I was just like, listen, thank you, we've won this thing now. It was literally 3 or 4 years in a row we'd won the main award, and on all the main awards, and I didn't, I felt wrong to me to keep winning them. So then, we applied ourselves to the Juno Awards in a major way, and we've yet to win one. We've lost 12.
Really?
Yeah, we've never won a Juno. Everyone thinks we've won multiple. It even says like people multiple Juno Award winner, and I often get introduced that way. People assume we have, but we have never. We've lost 12 Junos.
Like Susan Lucci.
We're the Susan Lucci of the Juno Awards, and I'm nominated for one for Shantyman actually this year for Roots Traditional.
Congratulations.
Well, I don't know. I'm hoping to be nominated. I shouldn't say I'm nominated. I'm hoping. I submitted again.
Yes.
Having sworn 10 years ago I would never submit, but I was just nominated. I put it in what it is was I was nominated for an East Coast Music Award. So I figure after being away from there for 15 years, it's safe to go back. And I'm nominated there for an award. And so I went, maybe quite foolishly, have submitted myself to the Junos in hopes of a nomination. But that's me, the optimist who never gives up believing,
You never know. You never know. And no matter what happens, I'm sure the experience is fun just to be there and party and whatnot.
No, not for me. It's all about winning now, Naomi.
Right on. Okay.
I said to our mutual friend Eric Alper, I said, so Eric, if I submit for a Juno nomination, I mean, I've lost 12. There's no possible way they could deny me again. And he came back, he said, well, you've lost 12 in a row. there's every indication to the opposite that you'll probably lose 13.
That's the promo clip of the show right there.
Yeah. Who knows? Who knows about the Junos, but we live in hope. We live in hope.
No kidding. Now, do you have a very musical family?
No, not really. My mom played some piano. And my dad was a good recitation man. He used to tell stories, recitate poems, long form poems that told stories, like Robert W. Service. And
Wow.
so everyone in Newfoundland he's a gregarious fellow, lots of jokes. But everyone in Newfoundland, if you can't sing, and not everyone really can, but most people can, but as far as leading the song, if you don't do that, then you generally have stories that you can tell,
Mm-hmm.
That's the other thing. Stories are powerful things, as we know.
So when you originally decided to get into music, did you have other passions you were pursuing, or was it just you knew right away, I'm a musician?
No, I knew I was interested in music, and not just because of the girls and the better pay and the bars, but I genuinely loved music from an early age, and was collecting vinyl. I still have every record and cassette and CD and even 8-track that I've consumed over the years. And
Oh, that's awesome.
yeah, I've always loved it, but I didn't know that I was capable of it until I bought my first guitar, Old Brown. But I was 22 years old when I bought him. 21. So I was late to the game, and I wish I'd started earlier, but I just never really had any. I played hockey, I didn't go down that path. Unfortunately, who knew? I was actually in band in grade 8. Now that I recall, they gave me a clarinet, which is really not what I'm interested in. So I didn't do well, and I was kicked out of band at the end of grade 8 for having no musical aptitude.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I didn't really go back that way until I got in university and fell in with my thespian friends. I hung out with philosophers and actors and songwriters and poets, and I fell in with that crowd. Yeah.
Who are some of your musical heroes?
There's a Newfoundland set of heroes, but there's also some, big bands for me in the 80s were Men at Work, The Police, the Pogues came along. But I think my real heroes, if I were to boil it down, it'd be like Johnny Cash. I think you need him. Everyone needs a bit of that. The Clash you need that in your life. That's the ringing of the rock and roll bell. And Bob Marley. I think he's an essential to me, and John Lennon
Yeah.
solo, and these are, I could go on and on, but these are when it boils down. I actually get asked that question a lot, but those four stand out for sure as far as motivational, consistent, and I love them so much that I don't listen to them too much. I don't ever want to be tired of those artists. They're that
Yeah.
precious. So I save them for when I need them.
That's a smart thing. Yeah. You don't want to
Yeah.
overkill what you love. That's how
Yeah,
I
and we
felt
have
about Jagged Little Pill when it came out.
Oh yeah. I had a few girlfriends who felt the same way, and they really OD'd on Jagged Little Pill. Man, it was like I dug it. It was cool, and but I get it. It was definitely that's one of those records that people live for that record. That was a couple of years straight where that was full on.
For sure. Yeah. It's probably, I think it's the number 4 best selling album of the whole 90s, too. So that's quite the accolade.
Yeah, it was like it was just a powerful noise that came there. It was like, for me, that was the Clash was like that for me. It was literally a bell ringing in your head, like, here we go.
Mm-hmm.
No bullshit, full on, let's go. And that's exactly where Morissette came out swinging.
For sure.
Much respect.
Tell me about your recent project, what you're currently working on now.
Over the pandemic, I kept busy with virtual stuff, but myself and my wife wrote a book together called One Good Reason, which is about my recovery journey, our recovery journey. We actually published that early in the pandemic, and that became a Canadian bestseller. And we never
That's
did get
wonderful.
to promote it properly. We never got to we had a year's workbook just doing the book, all the lit fests and in-store book signings with Indigo nationally and all that kind of stuff, and it never happened, and hopefully it will still. So that was early on, and then just most recently, because I thought, we thought the pandemic was going to last a couple of weeks, but in the second year of it, I went back to my one of my favorite hobbies, and that's researching sea shanties. And I've got a master's degree. It's not finished. I left with the band it started, but I have a degree in philosophy and a master's started in folklore and folk music, in ethnomusicology. Yeah. So I'm a total folk nerd. So I've always, and I was the shanty man in Great Big Sea, and I knew where to find this stuff, and I love messing with them and evolving them and arranging them. So I've got this shanty file. It's got over 100 songs in it, and it's spun out. When I left the band, when I stopped playing with the band, I wasn't really interested in that, and I started to write different songs about recovery, which is a lot of them are in the book, One Good Reason. But this winter, I kind of missed, and a lot of my stuff has been meditative and it's very message driven, especially with mental health and addiction. But this stuff was just, these songs are physical, they're belters. And I miss that, singing like you're swinging for the fences, and I found myself up in my studio here just singing them one day, and it felt so good that I just started demoing them. And then my wife said, you should make this record. I've been talking about Shantyman forever, my next traditional record. And then Shanty Talk happened.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, well, that was only a second. I mean, in an internet blip where shanties were famous and my kids thought I'd be huge again. It lasted about a day, but I mean, for me, the shanties have been my whole life, and I just saw it as a sign to do the record, and I just did. So, and that just came out in Labor Day this September.
That's fantastic. It sounds like such a unique project too. And you had some people working on there, like Hawksley Workman, Big Sugars, Gordy Johnson, etc. Like a lot of people involved.
Not many, but they were. I did the whole record myself, and then it sounded. I know a good record when I hear it. I'm like, oh my goodness. And I still have that version, and I'm like, I'm gonna have to spend money now because it's you have to serve the song, and that's the motto of the Shantyman, the servant of the song. And I'm like, okay, This is a good little record. It's an indie record. It's what I did on my pandemic vacation, all by myself, playing all the instruments. But I'm not that good at all those things, and I know it could be better if. So I, rather than deny its potential, I spent the money, and I went to guys who think big. And it was first stop was Hawksley Workman. Again, we weren't in a studio together. He's in Peterborough, so I just sent him the record. And I said, play bass and drums for sure and everything else you want. And he just, it only took him a few days and he just blew it up.
Wow.
The guy he's just such a great player, and it's weird because we didn't have the opportunity to work it out. These were arrangements were fully formed, fill in the blanks basically. And he just crushed it. So then that came up and then I sent it to a fiddler from Nova Scotia, J.P. Cormier, who's he doesn't get a lot of attention. He's more of a mandolin guitar guy, but I just happen to know from my friend Joel Plaskett, really, because he played on Joel Plaskett's records. And I sought him out. I said, Joel, who's the guy who plays on your records all the time? He's really unorthodox. He doesn't sound like the Cape Breton guys. And he hooked up with JP again. JP had it for 2 days, sent it back, and there was the fiddle. And then I knew I had this dangerous little record, and I was going to mix it myself again to try and save some money. And my wife talked me out of that. She said, "Look, Sean, this is some of the best work you've done. We need someone good to finish it." And so there's this guy, Gordy Johnson, the Big Sugar Man, and I've loved him for years, been fans for years. I actually tried to get him to produce a Great Big Sea record, and we had a meeting in St. John's at this bar called the Duke of Duckworth one day, and I talked the guys into at least talking to him because he's not like us. He wasn't a folk guy. He was a rock and roll reggae guy.
Yeah.
And we sat down, and one of the guys asked him, "Gordy, what would you do if you had the opportunity to produce a Great Big Sea record?" And he looked at me, he said, "Sean, what's that drum thing you play?" And I play a goatskin hand drum called the Boron.
Yeah.
And I said it's a Boron, Gord. And he said, "Well, I'd take that little drum thingy you play and I'd make it loud as fuck."
Yes.
That's the first thing I would do. And of course, as the drum thingy player, I thought that was the best thing I could hear. But I looked around the table and I could see the eyes gloss over. So that wasn't happening.
Oh, jeez.
So I held that in my heart for many years. It was an opportunity missed. I mean, I think, he talked himself out of that gig. But he was upfront and honest. But I can honestly say that with this record, that the drum thingy, the Boron, is as loud as fuck. So I'm finally satisfied.
That's incredible. That's
He
a
was great.
Right there.
Again, he just does what he does. There's no direction given. I did not offer direction to any of those guys, JP, Oxley, or Gordy. I assembled these arrangements and let them run with what they could do. They were beasts at it, and it just worked out well. Because again, normally you'd be in the same room, and in this case, it was all remote, and it was a real roll of the dice. So, but I'm really happy. It turned out to be a powerful little thing, and it's if anyone wants to listen to it, just go to SeanMcCannSings.com, and that's where you'll find it.
You know what? It's fantastic. And I'm really supportive of the idea that you are not releasing it on streaming platforms. Can you tell me a bit about your stance on that right now?
Can't afford to. I had to spend money on this. Is a good record. This is
Yeah.
Shantyman is good. It's good. It sounds good because it costs money, and it's worth money in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And like every artist, like 7 million other artists, I've for the last 3 or 4 solo records, I've just been uploading them directly. I don't see a purpose in labels really.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy to do it's easy to give your money away and put it up for streaming, and that seemed to be the only game in town. So I did it, and then I took a look at it because sea shanties are about work. They're literally songs that are designed to help us accomplish difficult tasks by working together in unison and using songs to set the tempo and create this harmony, right? So this, to me, that's why I think it's a great record for now, because we won't get through all this until we work together. And but I started to question the value of my work, and especially in the pandemic when there was so little work to be found. I did some virtual stuff, but the incomes of artists have been essentially wiped out for the last 2 years. So I started to I wanted to understand it more. I mean, I'm not not good at math, but I looked at it and I'm like, wow, I only get 0.0003 cents per stream. It's not very
brutal.
much. It's not very much. And I'm like, I wonder why that is. And so I Googled like Spotify, where it came from, and I learned that the owner of Spotify, Daniel Ek, he's in the same period where I made about $650, like over 4 years with 5 records and 80,000 followers. He'd made almost $4.5 billion. So he'd done really well. And then he claims that Spotify doesn't make much money as a business, but when you Google what it's worth, its capital value is almost $30 billion.
Wow.
That's what it's worth in shares. Yeah. So, and I keep hearing that like all these, the music business has done well. Its profits are up. And you've heard this since streaming started. Streaming has saved the music industry. Well, those profits are literally distributed to shareholders in companies like major labels or in Spotify, and they're distributed in the form of dividends. They're not distributed in the form of streaming is literally that little, but if you own shares in those companies. So I found out that the reason Spotify was able to get away with this is because all the major labels, all of them sat down early on and they heard Daniel Ek's pitch, and he needed them so he'd have this wealth of catalog to be effective. And they all agreed and they all participated in becoming shareholders in Spotify early on. So the fix was in. Now that was a conflict of interest because as a label, they're entitled to exploit the artist, but they're also expected to protect the artist. And in this case, while they increased the dividends to their shareholders, they destroyed the incomes of their artists. And I can tell you from the company Warner Music Canada that currently manages the Great Big Sea catalog, which I don't have sole control over. I'm only a 1/3 vote on that. They cashed out their Spotify shares in 2018 for $504 million.
Wow.
So a very few people are making an awful lot of money off the backs of a lot of people. A lot of people who are not wealthy people, a lot of people like me who just are artists who want to share their music but are now being exploited. There's 7 million of us. And you know what? I really believe that they can obviously afford to pay a little more, and I think that they should do the right thing and pay a little more. I mean, a penny a stream is not a lot to ask for, and that's the least they can do, especially when their personal profits are so egregiously high. So that's why it's not there. And people, I get a lot of support from artists who are like, "Thanks for doing this." I'm afraid to say anything to them, to Spotify, I'm afraid to do what you're doing, but I appreciate that you're doing it. And that's a terrible way to live too, when something has that much power over you. And I guess I'm just too old to care about that anymore. What I see only is the unfairness. And I'm not going to hurt Spotify. My absence is obviously not going to damage that company, but I'm going to use this record to say something.
You're standing for something, and that's important.
If like Jeremy Fisher's song, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. And I think we all got duped on this one, and by our record companies and by Spotify. And I don't think it's too late to change it. It would take very little to benefit so many people and hurt Spotify so little. But hopefully more people will rise up and find other ways to share.
Well, and I think just like you were already at this stance before the Neil Young and Joni Mitchell exodus of Spotify, right? So I think those high profile situations really drew attention to it, and I hope it continues to happen.
Yeah, my issue started when I made a point of it when I released in September, Labor Day. But it's funny because people, I guess when Neil Young came out, it all became about this. It turned into this free speech thing.
Yeah.
And when I was posting about this, I hardly ever get hate, but I saw this hate come back at me. Free speech and all this, and I'm like, listen, if you wanted me to pick between Daniel Ek and Neil Young, I'm going to pick Neil Young any day because he's way cooler and he's got a good point. But this is not my issue. But my issue is what I'm talking about is fair pay for work.
Yeah.
And what I do, I don't even know Joe Rogan. I don't know I don't listen to. I don't know anything about him. All I know is that for some reason, Spotify was able to pay him $100 million, and they still can't afford to pay singer-songwriters a thousandth of a penny.
It's such a piss off. Like, honestly, it's not fair to anybody else on the platform.
Insulting. It's insulting. And you know what's funny? I did all of my statistics. Spotify has a. They don't have human beings you can talk to, but they have a website they put out in response to, what is turning into a growing revolution, a small but growing revolution. And it's called. They have a web page called Get Loud, and it spells out all these stats. And they look at it as, so they've got like 13,000 people that made more than $1,000 or something. They look at their stats as if they're like a positive thing. They're so disconnected. Their stats are so miserable when you consider how many people are on it. And they're waving these flags like we have, 13,000 people that made $1,000. Well, but you still made billions.
That's nothing to be
and 13,000 is nothing in 7 million. And it's bizarre how tone deaf they are to what they're doing. And you know what they don't do? They never invest in anything. They have never, unlike at least record companies who have a history of really, taking of being corrupt. What they did was spend some money so that the artist could make a record.
Yeah.
Netflix doesn't lift a finger or raise a cent.
Yeah.
Spotify, sorry, Netflix was forced to do it.
After these messages, we'll be right back. Yeah.
Dope Nostalgia listeners, I love you and I thank you so much for being a part of this show and its success over the last 2 years. We have what's called Patreon for those who want to support the show financially. For as little as $1 a month, you can become a subscriber and get bonus content, early podcast release, all kinds of cool behind-the-scenes stuff, and more. There's different tiers of membership starting at only $1 a month. And we even have some special merch for you guys who are in it for the long run. So please join our Patreon. It's at www.patreon.com/dope nostalgia.
Throw on your Jinkas, Baby Tees, and Doc Martens, grab your Lisa Frank Trapper Keeper, and join Jackie and Danielle on a journey to the late 90s as we reminisce about the movies of our youth on the No More Late Fees podcast. Don't forget your flannel and butterfly clips. And remember, be kind and rewind.
Here's the ring. Here's the ring. Ring pop.
You can wear a ring around your finger. Ring pop.
I love the way a ring looks. I love the way my ring tastes. Ring pop.
It's a juicy tuna flavor. Ring pop.
Will you wear my ring? Ring pop.
Ring pop. It's a lollipop without a stick. A ring of flavor you can lick.
And tart and sour blue raspberry too. So now you can get off the stick and get a ring.
Ring pop.
Here's the thing. Unfortunately, our podcast is on Spotify, so I think that's going to be interesting. But how do you feel?
Well,
about
you're going to get
that?
in trouble with me.
How do you feel about that? That's a question I have to ask. But
I
also,
hope so. I hope that. I mean, this is an opportunity. What I did with my Spotify account is I just put a little 1-minute ad advertising my Shantyman record.
oh, okay.
And I guess because there's no humans there, no one noticed it. It's a 1-minute ad. It's a mashup of 3 tunes. And my voice saying, if you like this, go to SeanMcCann6.com.
that's
because
smart.
It's a
It
platform.
is.
It's a social media platform as much as anything. Everyone's afraid not to be there. Well, I said I'll be there. I'm just not going to put my music there. My voice is there though, and my
Yeah.
voice will be there on this thing too. I don't
Is
want
it
to
a
shut Spotify down. I want them to do the right thing.
yeah? Is it
You
is
know.
it wrong? Is it a bad idea for me to put any of the clips of the songs into this episode if it's going to be on Spotify?
No, go right ahead. Just don't put a full song on there.
No, I won't. I always just put in like 30 seconds
Sure.
just to so people can get a chance to hear the songs, and then
Yeah,
no,
I'm
then we direct them where to get them. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, and where to get mine is SeanMcCannSings.com, and you can buy a limited edition CD. There's only like 150 of those left because I only made 1,000. But that's enough to pay for the record, which is great. And I'm selling lots of digital downloads because people do want to support me directly.
That's wonderful.
And honestly, like it's not always all about the money. What I did do was I'm streaming all my music on my website. So if you can't afford to buy or to own Shantyman, you can listen to it anytime. Just go to my website and listen to it for nothing, as
That's
many times as
wonderful.
you want. I just, so I'll stream it. I just don't want someone else to take advantage of me. I don't think that's right.
No,
That's not who I
I'm
am.
glad you're doing that. I canceled my Spotify account. I was just like, why am I supporting this? Also, like, I don't think they're the greatest service, to be quite honest. I think there's better ones out there.
I think that they were the quickly the big game in town because they had the record companies at the table who were complicit as shareholders, and there was just a smart business move, just like I guess Joe Rogan's manager smart to get him $100 million. So it's when you know better, you do better, and I canceled mine too. So we'll move on. We'll survive without it, and we'll look for better companies who. I mean, there are better companies. Bandcamp is out there. I used to use
Yeah.
Bandcamp. I don't right now because my website is able to do all that stuff. You can listen. There's players but Bandcamp never. They're still around, and they take a percentage. They've managed to survive and profit, but not
Yeah.
egregiously. They're decent people.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I'm glad to see that they're still doing well. And I see a lot of like local artists, indie artists who are religiously using Bandcamp, which is nice.
Yeah, it's they're great to use. I might just put my song back there just to support them. Actually, at some point, I've figured out how to use my own website and enable the sale of, the streaming of, and all these things that Bandcamp can do. So I guess I'm saving myself 20% or whatever. But I feel like I'll put a song there just to give them a good for you.
Well, what you're doing is smart and it's awesome. And it's cool that you can have complete control over that, just doing it from your site.
Yeah, you know what? It took me like 30 minutes to upload my songs to Spotify. It took me about 30 days to get them off. It's really hard to get them back. I don't think I'll be very careful before I upload them again to anything like
Yes.
that. There's again people. One of the comments on Facebook was why don't you just renegotiate your contract with Spotify? And I'm like, there's no contract with Spotify. There's just DistroKid or TuneCore. You upload your songs and you hope for the best, and you take what you get. And that's just bad. That's just bad business. That's not smart.
You don't know where your music's going sometimes with TuneCore and alike,
No, and if you use a record label, then it gets even worse because they have control. So I'm not a proponent of record labels anymore. I've just whatever I can do myself, I will do, and I do work a lot harder, but I do have complete control over the material, and I can live and die by it's all my fault. I take full responsibility, and at least I don't have to worry about them,
Right.
and at least for my own stuff. I mean, Great Big Sea stuff is still unfortunately on Warner and still unfortunately on Spotify. I've been outvoted, but there you go. I tried.
Right. Well, what can you do? I mean, record companies are useful for getting people off the ground, but after that, it's just
They
you
used
can
to
do
be,
it.
but you know what? And I just know, like, I've noticed, when is the last time someone signed a new artist? Like, for real, on a major label?
And it's like
I
you were
can't,
saying earlier, you had to show that you guys could sell enough albums on your own without them first before they would even look at a band, right?
I don't think Warner Music has signed a band since Billy Talent.
That's
I haven't seen. I
incredible.
think they might have signed a country artist. There might be Megan Patrick. I think it's got signed,
Okay.
but I don't think they sign anything. And I do know that as of a decade ago, because they tried to get us to do it, and it's probably longer than that now, was this 360 deal where record companies would take your merch, half of everything.
Ah,
So
wow.
all your merch, all your ticket sales. So they give you 100 grand, but then they take your T-shirts and your ticket sales and all that stuff too. So,
Not
but they're
just
not.
your album sales. I thought that's how musicians made money nowadays was from touring.
Well, you did unless you signed with a major label. And across the
Mm,
board, they were offering this 360 deal. This was the new
yeah.
reality, and it just I don't think it went very far because you don't. There are no new artists that pop up, not via record companies anyway.
Yeah, that's a
They
good
might get
point.
managed by publicity firms and stuff after, but it all seems to be a different thing. But I don't see them. I don't see them investing lots of money in things anymore. I mean, I could be totally wrong. But I've been looking at the domestic roster here on Warner and Universal. I don't see a lot of activity.
It's
they're
really
not.
interesting.
They're living off their dividends. They're not investing. They're not spending money on artists,
Yeah.
which is sad.
Well, I'm going to move on to some happier things.
Yeah,
Let-
I don't want to be a bummer, and I'm just
no, you're not
like,
being a bummer. You're not being a bummer at all. I'm glad we talked about that because I think it's very important for people to know what's actually going on.
yeah. I mean, the down like what'll eventually when you devalue an asset like music, which is more important than money, then
Mhm.
once you put it under duress, you might lose it, and that's why it's worth talking about because it's something
Mhm.
we shouldn't lose this. We need this. This
Yep.
is what being human is about. This is what helps all the time. This is what heals. We
Especially
need it
now.
now more, especially now. Yeah, especially
Yeah.
now. So, I might have lost my faith in streaming services and record companies, but I haven't lost my faith in music, and I never will.
Yeah.
It means more to me than money for sure.
What country besides Canada has embraced your music? Like where have you guys gotten to travel outside of Canada and perform?
Personally, just me, it's just Canada and a little bit of America, which I'm going back to again this summer. But and if you're talking about Great Big Sea, it was literally
Mhm.
mainly just Canada and a
Mhm.
little bit of America. We got half big down there in some towns like Boston, the Eastern Seaboard. We might have been up to 1,000 people
Oh yeah.
in some markets, yeah. And but that was pretty much it. We'd occasionally go to Germany and Denmark, but that was more about getting on the piss than making it. That was just because it was fun.
Did
They
you
had
try
good
it?
beer.
Did you guys do any of those festivals those European festivals that we keep hearing about?
Yeah. Again, we'd never make a cent over there, but we had great fun doing them, especially in
Mm.
Denmark.
Yeah.
I'd go back there and make no money again, no problem. They were great fun. Although I've been sober for 10 years now, so I don't know if I'd see it through the same lens, or if
That's
I'd be able,
wonderful.
yeah, if I'd be able to survive it because it was quite the party.
Congratulations on 10 years of sobriety. That's amazing.
Thanks. I am proud of it, and I'm feeling strong. I'm ready to go, and I really miss singing. So that's it. I'm coming back. I'm actually going to be in Alberta in the end of April. I'm in Calgary for a couple of dates at the National Music Center at the King Eddie, the little place there, and I'm in
Excellent.
Canmore. For a gig, and I'm down in Brooks for a rural mental health conference as a keynote speaker. But I'm not
Excellent.
in Edmonton of yet. I can't seem to get. Can't get. No one's answering the phone yet in Edmonton. I'll keep trying.
You'll get it. You'll get it. Eventually we'll come see you.
But where do people like me play in Edmonton now? Like where would I go?
That's a good question. Because venues are hit and miss right now, and a lot of them have probably closed due to the fact that they haven't been able to make any money in 2 years.
Yep.
So I'm sure that's a problem worldwide. But to actually know where the best spots to play anymore, who knows? Maybe still the
Yeah.
Starlight Room.
Yeah, tried them. No, I can't seem to get them on the.
Really?
Maybe they're just not digging the shanty vibe, man. I don't know. What can
No,
you do?
I don't think it's that because I think every genre is welcome there. But well, I got to think about that. Oh, there's the it used to be called the Needle on Jasper. It's called the Station now. That's a music venue. That would be a nice place to check out to play.
Yeah,
And
is it?
yeah,
Yeah, I'm looking
sorry.
for like a place that's more about the music, so people can listen to what I'm saying, and talking about
Yeah,
and stuff.
not
Not.
just be sitting there in their own conversations and being loud and
Yeah, I'm not.
boisterous.
I'm not interested in just being background noise in a bar for people.
Yeah.
That's not what I'm interested in. That's all. So that makes it a little harder for me. But I've usually been able to find little halls, town halls, and stuff. And
Hmm.
there's still a few left, and that's where I'll spend the remainder of my shantyman tour.
Good,
But I'd
good.
like to come back. I like Edmonton. It's good people up there.
Yeah, yeah, we got that going for us for sure.
Absolutely.
The weather is something else, but
Hey, I'm from Newfoundland. Like, there's no.
you've seen some weather.
Yeah, where you get knocked down when you walk out your door because the wind is 200 miles an hour.
Yeah, yeah. So what deep cut from Great Big Sea have you guys recorded that you wish had been a single? I'd love to play a clip of it.
Live This Life.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the last song I wrote for the band and with Alan. So, and I think we were trying to communicate with each other in that song. We fell short, but I think it was a beautiful song.
Well,
It was
we'll
almost like
definitely
it
share
was
it.
almost like my goodbye to the band. Yeah.
Just a side note, I was unable to attain a copy of the Great Big Sea song Live This Life to play as one of the deep cuts that I like to play, usually off our artist album. So, what I'm going to play instead is When I'm Up, I Can't Get Down. But you can get that song, Live This Life, from the Great Big Sea album 20. You can listen to it on their YouTube channel as well as all the other resources for Great Big Sea music.
I am the fountain of affection. I'm the instrument of joy. To keep the good times rolling, I'm the boy, I'm the boy. You know the world could be our oyster. If you just put your trust in me, 'cause we'll keep the good times rolling. Wait and see, wait and see. Oh, wait and see. There's exultation, there's sweet disintegration of beauty's colorations, then it comes along. Up is what he chooses, the kisses and the bruises. There ain't nothing he refuses, then it comes along, it comes along. And I am lifted, I am lifted. When I'm up, I can't get down. Can't get down, can't get level. When I'm up, I can't get down. Get my feet back on the ground. When I'm up, I can't get down. Can't get down, can't get level. When I'm up, I can't.
Where would you tell someone to visit who was a tourist to? I was going to say Newfoundland. We'll go there, but also where you are now near Ottawa. What kind of tourist destinations would you recommend?
Well, it's a really cool place. Like, it's a bigger town, and I needed a bigger town. I needed space. So if you're into like cycling, kayaking, it's a very healthy town, and I like it. It's very governmenty though, and sometimes prone to large protests
I've
or
heard.
occupations, depending on where you stand.
As an Albertan, I apologize.
It was a thing.
Yeah.
It was a thing for the last month. That was a thing. But I mean, I've come to like, I've really like, it's become a second home to me. And I recommend that every Canadian should come to Ottawa and not just see Parliament and stuff, but there's the city itself with the locks and all that. There's a real cool vibe, and it is very multicultural, which I like. Newfoundland is not so much multicultural, but it is very Irish and English and pubbish.
Yeah.
But the geography there, and it does have the most bars per capita in North America, and it has a reputation as a party town, and it's deserved.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're into that, there's no better place you can go except maybe New Orleans or Vegas. It's definitely in the top 3.
Mm-hmm.
A bit colder than both. But the geography, the cliffs, and I'm a kayaker. I'm a shantyman sailor. So sea
Wonderful.
kayaking, I do it on the St. Lawrence River now, and I go to Quebec quite often to get to the ocean. But sea kayaking, if you get to go to Newfoundland, you should sea kayak in Newfoundland on real waves.
Oh,
And if you go to
wow.
Newfoundland, you should buy a good pair of hiking boots and get on the trails, because you can walk for miles. Like, if you left downtown and you drove 15 minutes in any direction to downtown St. John's, you're literally in the middle of nowhere really quick. And you can get out of your car, get on a trail, and walk into the woods as far as you want. And you can stay there if you want, and you can light fires if you want. And there's a real freedom. Because no one owns it. It's like a crown land, they call it. So that's
Yeah.
what I miss about it. In Ontario, every speck of land is spoken for. But in Newfoundland, there's thousands of miles that you can just go for long walks in. And it's gorgeous. Dress for the
Wow.
weather, but if you get a good day, 300-foot cliffs, raging ocean waves. It's pretty inspiring, and it's physically demanding, and that's the kind of stuff I'm into now. So if you like that stuff, do
Oh
it.
yeah. I love anytime I can be near the ocean too, and I'd love to see that because like obviously I'm pretty landlocked in Alberta. And
Yeah,
I
I guess
mean,
you got to go west, really closest to you, right?
yeah, like 12-hour drive to the coast. But I mean, still like I can't complain because we have the beautiful Rocky Mountains here very close
You
by.
do.
So
Yeah, my
that
other
is
favorite
a
place.
view. That is a
Yeah,
view.
love the mountains. Yeah, they're gorgeous. And I think I was 24 years old first time I saw the Rockies.
Yeah.
And I've been going back every year. Banff is usually where I base out of, Banff Center
Mhm.
up there. And I've written a lot of songs up there.
Really?
It's definitely a big part of my life. I go there every year. Even in the pandemic, I managed to get there.
Oh, that's so good.
Yeah,
Must be inspiring.
it is something bigger than yourself. It's nothing more humbling, but honoring at the same time.
Well, as I start to wrap things up, one of the questions I ask everybody who comes on the show, because we are 90s orientated, what food, clothing item, toy, or anything, etc., makes you nostalgic for the 90s?
I would say my CD collection.
Yeah,
The
nice.
90s are when we abandoned the vinyl and went full on CD, right?
Exactly.
And so I have all that at my fingertips. And I mean, I've got a couple of thousand CDs. And, remember those CDs were now CDs?
Yes.
Now number
There's so
one, now
many
number
volumes.
3. Much Music presents now. So Great Big Sea, we're on like a half a dozen of them with, I Mother Earth and
Were you on
Our
Big
Lady
Shiny
Peace.
Tunes?
Big Shiny Tunes. Yes, Big Shiny Tunes. Yeah.
Yeah. We were just talking about that the other day. It's such a huge Canadian legacy with those albums and how they shared so many songs with the whole country.
Yeah, we were on like 3 or 4 of them, Big Shiny Tunes, because it was all through the 90s. So every year we got asked to put a song on there for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Big Shiny Tunes, yeah. And it was funny because it would be like Great Big Sea, Our Lady Peace, and Junk House. Just the
Yeah.
weirdest mix of stuff, right? We always I'm like, do we belong on that record? Because it was all kind of heavier stuff, and we were not. We were so not that. So
Did you face that a lot when doing like any kind of festival thing in Canada? Did you guys feel like the lineup on the bill was like going to be much different than your sound?
oh yeah, we never had a drummer until the 10th year. It was year
Yeah.
11 when we actually got a drummer. So I was the drummer. I played the boron. That's loud as
Mhm.
fuck. And
Yes.
it was loud. We used to have it really loud. But yeah, no, but we were, we were, I guess we must have felt intimidated, and maybe we were just crazy, or maybe we were determined. So we were often on stage, sharing the stage and opening up for bands that were just like heavy, electric guitars, drums, and
Yeah.
but we earned their respect. Like we ended up often touring with the Hip
Mm-hmm.
and Spirit of the West, Big Sugar, like big loud bands. We were able to hold our own. We were over the top. Our show was aggressive.
Mm.
We were great. We were good singers. Like we, um, and we had a great energy, and it was the opposite. It was no darkness in our stuff. If anything, like, I mean, you couldn't, it was against the brand. Even every now and then I try to, let's sing a sad one. No. But we were like the anti-grunge, you know, and we wore the same clothes, but no, we it never deterred us. It never stopped us, and we earned our position. We had the respect of the heaviest bands, including Junk House, including like all the big, strong bands. Once they got to see us, I'm sure they must have like been expecting like, this is not going to work. And then they're like, oh, okay. Those guys are on fire.
We all love Great Big Sea. They're one of those Canadian bands that puts a smile on your face. Everybody's happy to hear one of your songs come on. You know, it's a huge legacy to the music in our country. So I want to thank you for that and what you guys have done.
No, thank you. And, you know, thanks for listening over the years. And it was, you know, one thing we were probably guilty of instilling many hangovers, but we certainly lifted a lot of hearts too. So,
yeah,
not least of all mine.
Well, I'm very happy to have talked to you about all this wonderful stuff today, and especially talking about the Spotify thing, because I think it's important that people know what's going on. So thank you so much, Sean.
Yeah, thanks for listening. And again, you know, we don't change the world in big waves. We change it one person at a time. And good things can happen if you don't give up. I've learned that. There's one thing I've learned in my life. That's it. If you don't give up, you have a better chance of being successful.
Amen to that. I'll make sure that we put out the links so people can go to your website and listen to Shanty Man, and we'll be sharing it. So that's
right
awesome.
On.
Thank
Lovely
you so
to
much.
talk to you, Naomi, and yeah, keep in touch and tag me and we'll share it out.
Social media, yeah, we've got it. Send us an email, dopenostalgiapodcast@gmail.com. Twitter, Nostalgia Dope. Or on Insta, dope_nostalgia.
This podcast is licensed by SOCAN because we believe that artists should be paid for their work.